But Cordell Hull did know.
In all my 50 years of public service, I have never seen a document that was more crowded with infamous falsehoods and distortions on a scale so huge that I never imagined until today that any government on this planet was capable of uttering them. Scoundrels, pissants.
They were lucky to get out of here alive. I mean, they could have been lynched on the streets. The fury about this. You stir up this country, make it feel kicked around and insulted. You've stirred up quite a nest of bees, you know. Hitler never understood this country, nor the Japanese. They thought we were soft and pleasure-loving. We didn't have the discipline to stick through a tough, long war and take a lot of casualties. I don't know how they think this country was explored and developed. It wasn't done by wimps. They didn't know that.
Japanese at the time, without any restraint, went around shouting, "Banzai, Banzai, Japan is victorious. We have hit the enemy at Pearl Harbor." That was wrong. The seeds of Japan's defeat were already right there. Yamamoto's aim was to impress the United States with Japan's power. That was a mistake. A very big mistake.
Yamamoto himself, in the aftermath of his greatest triumph, admitted to quiet doubts.
I fear that all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with terrible resolve.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. But always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us.
The final emotion shared by most people on Hawaii was one of intense humiliation.
It's a disgrace. And that disgrace gets into you and you get a guilt complex. You take the guilt complex out by hating the Japanese that did it. Whereas if you were really honest, you'd sit down and say, look, we were sound asleep.
The way I felt about the Japs was pure hatred for many, many years. I do know that when I got back to the States, as a result of that, the December 7th, every time I saw a plane overhead, I'd duck. That went on for a long time. And in more recent years, I've just calmed down and I've become more forgiving. And, well, not forgiving, I can't say that I forgive that. But I don't blame the entire Japanese race by any means. I just blame the people who did it.
I don't hate anybody. I've never hated anybody in my life. They were doing their job. I never fought the Japanese people. I fought the Japanese war machine.
As far as I'm concerned, it was in the midst of a war. And when the war ended, there were no sides, like in a soccer game. And we must now join together in friendship.
I just wish that there was a better understanding among people and that death and destruction wouldn't be the solution to every problem.
Remember Pearl Harbor became the slogan and anthem of America in World War II. The implication was that nobody alive then would ever forget. The day of total reconciliation between Japanese and Americans may come, but has not come yet. It's enough to say that one Japanese, Zenji Abe, a pilot who bombed the battleship Arizona on the morning of December 7th, 1941, now prays before the wall bearing the names of the dead. And that one American, Richard Fisk, who was under the bombs that morning, visits the same wall in the same spirit.
This is part of our heritage. Those boys that readily gave their lives that morning, they should be remembered, and they should never forget what our young Americans stood for at that particular time. And God, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had no more memorials to be built for the fallen, but only for the ones that accomplished something in this life and to make this a better world. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Because sometimes the day ends and the pain doesn't, we're introducing new Tylenol PM. It's more than relief. It's relief for those times when you can't sleep. Tylenol PM has extra strength Tylenol pain reliever to help stop your nighttime aches and pains, plus a gentle ingredient to help you sleep, so you can wake up refreshed in the morning. From the name you trust comes new Tylenol PM, so you can rest easy.
For years, Pledge has kept our furniture beautiful. Well, now New Pledge does even more. With a special dust-resistant formula called Dust Block, now Pledge actually repels dust. 2 weeks ago, I polished the word Pledge into this table. Watch. New Pledge repels over half the dust I'd get just dry dusting. Pledge knows our lives are a lot busier these days, but with New Pledge, they're a little easier, too.
New Pledge with Dust Block. It actually repels dust. From SC Johnson Wax.
There's a cologne that preferred men prefer.
Preferred stock cologne from the House of Stetson. Smooth and extra special.
Preferred stock cologne. What preferred men prefer. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Whisk, whisk. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Whisk, whisk.
Advanced Action Whisk dissolves adhesive bonds that lock dirt and stains onto your clothes to clean a whole wash load of tisks.
Tisk, tisk, whisk, whisk, whisk.
You can count on Sears for great Christmas values. Come see this GE electric range with window and timer for only $399.99. A great range, a great price, only $399.99. Only at Sears Brand Central.
And we're approaching here of Port Hole.
When we come back to remember Pearl Harbor, extraordinary underwater pictures that never have been seen before.
Monday, when the burlesque closes, the men of Evening Shade protest.
Hey there, how's that? Had enough, you perverts?
Then, when the kids find a rare turtle, guess who goes into shell shock?
Claude is about to become a mother. Claude is really Claudette?
Turtle Power on Major Dad.
All those who love great comedies say aye.
A sailboat race becomes a desperate race for life when a man is trapped on a sinking boat.
It was the most frightening experience I have ever had.
Rescue 911 Tuesday.
This is CBS.
You know, when I call Uncle Manny, the great Canadian fisherman from Medicine Hat, that line's so clear, I can hear the mosquitoes buzzing. He's not a good fly fisherman. He thinks he's a good fly fisherman.
With AT&T, calls to Canada sound like next door. That's why Mike Raber depends on AT&T International Long Distance.
I usually ask him,
hello?
So how's the fish?
Fantastic.
He usually tells the truth. He hasn't ice fished in a while. The last time he fell into the South Saskatchewan River.
Buy one, get one, 1/2 off. Buy one, get one, 1/2 off.
This
This week at Marshall's, buy any coat or jacket at our everyday low prices and get a second coat or jacket 1/2 off. It's our entire stock for men, women, and kids. The same famous names you see in department stores without their famous prices. Zip on over. Come on, hurry. Sunday, it's a wrap.
Marshall's. Tula's Engaged. The inside stories on Entertainment Tonight.
Well, after Pearl Harbor and after much pain, the Allies triumphed in World War II. But you know, we did a poll in Japan recently and found that only 53% of Japanese are sure which side started that war.
That doesn't surprise me. You know, the focus in Japan on the war is very much on Hiroshima and what happened there. And let's face it, there's a lot of revisionist thinking with regard to the war on both sides of the Pacific, here and in Japan.
If you look around the world today, General, it's possible to ask who really won. The Japanese seem to have achieved economically what they were trying to achieve militarily back in the 40s.
You know, there are many elements of national power, and, you know, economic being one of them, military being another. I think one of the amazing things about Japan is without the military power, they were still able to become the dominant economic power of the Pacific.
And today, there's a role reversal. Many Japanese think of us as the trigger-happy military country of the world. There wasn't much support in Japan for that war of yours in the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, but I think after the fact, that's still an ongoing debate. A lot of people in Japan recognized that what we were doing was protecting that 65% of their oil that comes from the Gulf, the very resource that allows them to be an economic power.
Well, today in Pearl Harbor, there was no official Japanese presence. It was a day of pure American remembrance.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please bow your heads in a minute of silence?
Look at the water here, clear and quiet. It wrapped its arms around the finest sons any nation could ever have, and it carried them to a better world. May God bless them, and may God bless America, the most wondrous land on earth.
And now we are joined by the President. Keeping us straight on our history of the day, Mr. President, we have your old friend Norman Schwarzkopf on the line with us, too.
You got a good man there, man that made this country proud.
You set a tone of healing in nearly everything you said at Pearl Harbor today, it seemed to us. Can you imagine a day when a Prime Minister of Japan stands beside the President on a Pearl Harbor Day?
I can. I can also understand, Charles, the bitterness that some families have. After the little piece that you probably saw at Arizona, I went back into another room and I put my arm around the sisters and the daughters of some that are still entombed in Arizona. And I can understand if a survivor family have a bitterness and have a anger, but this is not a time for rancor. This is a time to go forward.
Mr. President, this is Norm Schwarzkopf. I've just got to tell you, as somebody who was with you a year ago with the troops last year, seeing you on the Arizona and seeing with those veterans in a very, very special way, a very different way, but still with the troops, it made me feel great.
Well, I think back with Colin sitting there and you halfway around the world back in New York, I thought of that today. And I'll tell you why. It's something that you expressed so clearly every time you had a chance, and that is the character of the kids, the young men and women now in our armed services. And there's a parallel there. I remember my buddies and my guys I flew with and the people that maintained the planes and the Marines and the sailors and the soldiers. And I looked in the eyes of all these young men and women here today in Pearl Harbor, and you were right General, about the quality of these fighting men. I mean, it is wonderful. The men and women in our armed services are our very